Throughout this course, you'll be asked to express fractions in simplest form. So I'm just going to review what that means. And this is probably something you should have learned in previous years, but it's something that's also very easy to forget. What it means is that you have a fraction that cannot be expressed in any simpler form, that both the numerator and the denominator cannot be divided by any common number. So in the case of 4/8, you know that that would be the same as writing it as 1/2. And 1/2 is simplest form because no number can divide both into the numerator and the denominator. No whole number. So we're basically talking about whole numbers. Now 4/8 is relatively simple, but if you have a fraction such as 14/20, you might not see right away what it's equal to. And so what you need to do is find all the factors of 14, all the numbers that you can divide 14 into. So we'll just start listing those: 1, 2, 7, 14. Keep in mind that factors always come in pairs. 1 times 14 is 14, 2 times 7 is 14. And the factors of 20 would be 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20. So again, they come in pairs: 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. All those pairs of factors multiply to 20. So now we look for a common factor amongst these two. Well, I can see that 2 is in both of them. So that means I can divide both these, the numerator and the denominator, by 2. So first of all, I'm going to divide the numerator by 2, and I get 7. And I have to do exactly the same thing to the denominator. So my simplest form is 7/10, and there's no number besides 1 that will divide into 7 and 10. So 7/10 is simplest form for 14/20. Let's take one like 68/100. So first of all, let's find the factors of 68. So I know that 1 and 68 will be factors. I know that 2 and 24 will be factors. And I know that those will be factors. And if I look a little closer, I can see that 4 and 17 are factors, although those might not be obvious to start with. Now when I take a look at the factors of 100, I know there's quite a few, so let me just start with 1 and 100, 2 and 50, 4 and 25. So those are the factors of 100. So when I look at the two sets of factors, I can see that 4 is a factor of both 68 and 100. So I'm going to divide 68 by 4, and I get 17. And I divide 100 by 4, and I get 25. So 17/25 is a fraction that's equivalent to 68/100, but it's now in simplest form because there's no number that will go into 17 and 25. If you have trouble finding the factors of number, one thing you can do is with even numbers is you can just reduce it sort of one at a time. So I know that 2 will go into both of these numbers, and I'll end up with 34/50. Well, I can see they're both even numbers again, so I know 2 will go into that again. 17/25. Now I've got two odd numbers, and I know that nothing will divide into 17 evenly, so I know that I've got simplest form. So sometimes you can do it multi-steps without finding the factors if you've got even numbers, or if you've got numbers that end in, for example, 5 and 0. I know that 5 will go into both of those. 5 will go into this 5 times, and 5 will go into 70 14 times. Now I can see that this is simplest form. So another example of a fraction you might get is the improper fraction, where the numerator is larger than the denominator. So this also is not in simplest form, so it needs to be changed to a mixed number, a whole number and a fraction. So I need to determine how many 5s there are in 28 to get my whole number. So I know there are 5 5s in 28, and then I know that there would be a remainder of 3/5. Okay, so it could also be written like this: 25/5 plus 3/5, which would lead us to this mixed number. So that's another type of fraction you might get that is not in simplest form. And there's just one more type of number you might run into, and it's something like this, where you have a decimal and a fraction together. This also is not in simplest form. What we need to do is convert this numerator to a whole number. So one way I could convert that to a whole number, this particular one, is by multiplying it by 2. I know that will give me a 5 there, but then I would also have to do the same to the denominator, and this would be my number in simplest terms, because when I have a decimal and a fraction together, that is not considered simplest terms. So you just have to find a number that you can multiply to get a whole number. And one simple way of doing it is depending on the number of decimals you've got. Sometimes you can just multiply it by 10, so that if you've got a number like this, that would be the equivalent of, you could just multiply each of those by 10. Okay, so that also is one way. Now you also then have to look to make sure that there's nothing that will divide into both of these to make sure it still is in simplest form.